Hey everyone, it's Brandon with Magic Land Vacations, the Travel Planning Genies. It's another Travel Planning Tuesday, and today we're talking about traveling with guests with disabilities. Whether it's mobility issue, whether it's some other kind of issue. And today I thought I would have one of our Travel Planning Genie experts on this join us, and that is Sarah Miller. Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Brandon. Hi, everyone. It's great to be here.
So Sarah has helped a lot of clients specifically with special needs ranging from all kinds of disabilities. So I thought it would be great to just talk to her and ask her some questions for those of us who are traveling with friends or family members who have unique disabilities. And we want to make sure that everyone in our family has the most magical time on their vacation, as they should. So Sarah's going to give us some really amazing tips and pointers and feedback on how to navigate this. And I'm actually going to put Sarah's direct calendar link down below. So if you have a guest or a friend who's wants to travel to Disney or Universal, could be a Disney cruise, could be Aulani, could be Disney World, Disneyland, Universal Orlando, Hollywood, doesn't matter. Sarah would be more than happy to help you specifically plan for your family's vacation, because remember, these are just general guidelines and tips. So every single family has very unique special needs, and that's what we do as Travel Planning Genies, is we cater specifically to those families' unique needs. So the first question I have for you, Sarah, is just tell us a little bit about why you have a special heart with families traveling with disabilities and special needs.
So in my family, we have a range of disabilities and neurodivergence and special needs going on. I have family members who have autism. I have family members with Parkinson's. I myself sustained an injury several years ago, which makes walking long distances very, very difficult for me. Actually makes short distances difficult for me. So it's changed a lot of how we go to the parks, or when we go to the parks together, how we do things when you have different disabilities, and getting by, not just in the parks themselves, but also when you're going to resorts, you start looking for different features and amenities. So in order to have the best time and in order to be safe, it's just a different experience all around, and making sure that everybody has a great and wonderful time is just a huge part of it. You want to have wonderful memories and great memories. You don't want to be stressing out about whether or not someone can get someplace or do something.
Absolutely, and you want to know those things before you get there, not try to figure it out while you're there on your vacation.
Oh, absolutely, because finding out in the moment is so much harder. And honestly, even knowing all of the things that you need to know and should know ahead of time, it's still going to add a little bit of work to your trip a lot of times. So knowing it ahead of time is really critical.
Absolutely. So why don't we first just talk about, if you have a friend or family with a mobility issue and they're interested in renting a scooter or an EVC, whether at Disney or Universal, how does that process kind of work?
So Disney recently changed their ECV policies, and really all that meant is that they changed the company that they primarily work with. The new company is actually someone they've worked with in the past before, but now they kind of have a monopoly with Disney. They have a singular agreement with Disney. So when you work through that particular company, they will drop off the scooter at the hotel, and you will pick it up whenever you come in from guest services. And when you leave the scooter with guest services. And Disney, the resorts will handle all of the getting it to and from that vendor. But there are a host of other vendors who are just as good and wonderful. Just now, instead, you'll probably want to plan to have a scheduled time to pick up and receive your scooter or rental. And you'll also want to schedule a time for them to come pick it up as well. So you'll have to be present for those. So there's a little bit more complications now just with renting from an outside vendor. They don't have as long of a list of approved vendors. But honestly, it really hasn't changed too much of the experience overall. If you've got your good planner on your side and you know your times of your flights, everything will work out great, and it's really not that much of a hassle at all.
So that's something that you do, right? So you can help someone figure out what scooter rental company best suits their needs and figure out delivery time and all that jazz and help them walk through that whole process.
Absolutely, absolutely. And you just want to when we work through those things, we will find the amenities and additional things you might want. Sometimes, if you're going in summer, you're going to want to get a little extra part of your rental will be a shade or something like that, or a little fan or something like that. So there's little things you can add on as well to make your experience better. That I'm happy to help people find if they're interested in those things. So not every vendor carries them, so that's why we work for that.
And how was, now you rented a scooter on your recent vacation. How was that process for you?
It was very easy. I called them up. I said I need a scooter for this date. This is when I'm going to be there, and this is when I want to pick it up and use it by, and this is what I'm using it until. And it is much less expensive than getting the scooters at the park. However, on this last trip, I did also get a scooter at the park because my mom did not plan and did not think that she would need one. But in the end, it was like, oh yeah, I do. So we went and we got her scooters while we were there. And there are pros and cons to that too, absolutely. And I'm totally here to help you work through those. For example, when you rent an ECV, you're going to be taking it to your hotel. From your hotel, it means you have to find a place in your hotel room to park it. It means that you also have to get on and off the buses with it, and that's a little bit of a process. And there's some cool factors to that too. I'm not gonna lie, like the fact that you're boarded first does help a little bit in getting into the parks at reasonable hours and on time and faster. But it's also a little bit nerve-wracking if you've never driven an ECV and getting used to it. By the time you leave, though, you'll be an expert. Don't worry about it. But when you rent from the parks, you don't have to figure out where you're going to park it. You leave it there. If you want to change parks, you can just get a new one at the next park. You just show them your receipt from the last park, and they'll rent you an ECV. So you're not really losing. You're not spending more than you spent originally. It's the same amount, one per day, even if you go to 3 different parks. So, and I'd help you walk through all that stuff. So yeah, there's definitely benefits to one versus the other. I also think that the ones at the parks, they ride slower, for sure, but that's safer. So slow isn't always bad. So
Yes, true story. My late great grandmother was very fast on her scooter at her nursing home. Was quite dangerous. So yes, speed is not always a good thing when it comes to scooters and big crowds.
I just want to also say, the other thing with there's a lot of information to go with these scooters, and I'm totally here to help you with all of that stuff, from how to drive them, how not to drive them, little tips to making your battery life last longer. I'm your girl. I got a ton of info on all of it.
Fantastic. So, tell me a little bit about the DAS system that Disney has in place, and also the UAA system that Universal has in place. Tell me about those systems with guests with disabilities. Those basically come when it comes to visiting attractions and wait times and things of that nature.
Yeah. So DAS Pass at Disney World, you get this through guest relations, which can be found at all the different parks. They have one. And it's a very simple process of going in, saying, I need a DAS pass, telling them how many people in your party. Your whole party should be present because they're going to scan all your bands. And just to make sure the whole party is connected. And they're going to take the picture of the person who needs the DAS pass. That person has to be present to go on the ride that you sign up for to use the DAS pass. So let's say you wanted to go on Thunder Mountain using the DAS pass. You'd go up to the person standing at the front of the line, the cast member there, and you would say, I want to use my DAS pass for the ride. And they would check and make sure that, okay, so yep, you're qualified to use the DAS pass on this ride, no big deal. Come back 45 minutes from now or an hour from now, whatever the current wait time for the ride is. They're going to give you a time to come back based on that. You'll come back with your party, and they will direct your party to the entrance, whether it's going to be through the fast pass lane or through a special side entrance or an additional roundabout way to get in. Most of the time it's through the fast pass lane though. So really you're kind of waiting the normal length of time and maybe a little bit extra for the standard fast pass length, but you're usually in a faster, it's moving much faster and you get through it much quicker. And a lot of the times there's a separate entrance or side entrance, so you kind of get scooted around to wait instead. So it's a very nice feature, but the person who has the DAS pass must be present, and you can have up to 6 people registered with that person. So up to 6 people total can go with the DAS person onto a ride. So that's kind of how that works. It's very simple, and I highly recommend it. It takes nothing to get, and it really does change everything for your experience in lines, especially if you have someone who's neurodivergent or somebody who has a disorder that makes it really hard for them to stand or shuffle walk, which is what I call the ride, the wait time walk is a shuffle walk. Can be very difficult on bodies.
Even for people who have autism and they have a hard time waiting in line, they get really, really antsy. Or even if they have autism and it's just all the people at once waiting in that long line for a long period of time, it's also really helpful for that as well. For sure.
Absolutely.
What about the UAA? How does that work?
The UAA is very similar to the DAS. The UAA can be got through, I believe it's at the main gate in their guest services at Universal. That one works pretty much like a fast pass, an express pass to get onto the ride. So you just kind of skip the main line and you go to the fast pass line, their version of the fast pass line, the express pass line. So it's not too different in that regard. There isn't a whole lot of extra steps compared to the DAS. Sometimes though, it is recommended that you bring like a doctor's note if you're willing to share that information. They don't really require it, but I've heard a lot of people express that it makes it a lot easier to get through the process, to get the guest pass with it, to get the UAA with it. The gap pass is when their UAA pass isn't good enough. Like if you have someone with severe autism, you probably want the gap pass, which is a guest assistance pass. And that one is a lot harder, and you definitely want to have a doctor's note or information about the person's disability, and you may be denied for it. You're probably not going to be denied for the UAA.
So there's actually 2 different tiers at Universal. They have the UAA and then they have the GAP. So the GAP, you definitely should have some kind of documentation that you're comfortable sharing with them to actually receive it. And with the UAA, it's probably not necessary, but it's good to have it just in case.
Right, and the things that you should know for both of these places is that cast members aren't really trained or capable or allowed even to assist a person with a mobility disorder or disability onto a ride. They have to be able to transfer themselves, or the family can help them transfer, but they aren't allowed to, and there's all sorts of good reason for that. So be prepared to assist and offer assistance to the individual who needs assistance transferring either from an ECV or a wheelchair or just into a ride, because sometimes it's difficult. So, and I actually saw that recently at Disney when I was on Pirates of the Caribbean, and I got that reminder that, oh yeah, the cast members can't help. The family had to help, and people on the ride were allowed to help. We're all good, but not the cast members.
And that's obviously for safety reasons that cast members aren't allowed to help guests get on or get off the rides. So what are the best hotels with disabilities and for people with disabilities? And because you have family members that have Parkinson's and other mobility issues, what do you look for? How do you know if a hotel is friendly?
So all hotels have to be, and all the resorts and even the parks have to comply with the disability laws of the nation. There are federal laws. You can't get out of them when you run a business. You've got to apply to them. So on the one hand, they are all accessible to some extent or another. But the things that I look for, things that I found important, making sure that you have preferred room almost always. If you are going with anyone with any kind of disability. You want a preferred room most of the time because it's close to the amenities, it's close to the exits, it's less difficult to get.
Sorry
It's
about
less
that.
it's all good. It's usually preferred rooms are closer to all the amenities. They are closer. You can usually choose ones that are closer to the buses or to transportation. That's very important. Um, when I go to hotels and I see that the doors are, especially to the main buildings, um, are electronic, so they automatically open and slide, and there's no fighting with the doorway. Nobody has to open a door for you. That's a huge deal. So I stayed, when you stay at the, especially at Disney World, when you stay at the value and moderate resorts, many of them have rooms facing outwards. They're not like in a lobby or something like that where you go to the Grand Destino or Animal Kingdom Lodge, for example. All the rooms are inside like a standard hotel, and all the ones at the moderates and the resorts tend to be out facing like a motel. And oddly enough, the outward facing rooms are actually a little bit easier to navigate because you can choose a lower floor instead of having to take an elevator up and down. And a lot of times the accessible, like for hearing accessibility, if you are deaf or hard of hearing, those rooms are usually also located downstairs, as well as rooms for wheelchair accessibility. If you need to have a wheelchair in your room and you are completely mobility dependent on devices or scooters or walkers to get around, those rooms are larger and they're usually located on lower floors. So those are important features. My experience staying at a hotel with a tower, the Grand Destino Tower, was very difficult to navigate alone. Because getting on, for example, I got onto the elevator in the ECV, and because the elevators are automatic and the doors open and they close at a set time, getting the ECV onto the elevator was very difficult. Getting back off of the elevator was very difficult unless somebody's there to hold the door for you. Getting into my room was very difficult. Whereas I had no trouble when I stayed at the All-Stars because the doors are angled. All the doors were angled in such a way that it made it easy for me to come up to the door, hit the handle, and gently push it. It wasn't as difficult.
Interesting. And
Yeah,
something else that we had talked previously about that you mentioned is the size of the rooms too. So it's not, accessibility, getting in and out of the room, a preferred room is such a good, helpful piece of advice, making sure you're closer to where the food and the restaurants are, front desk, the bus stops, all that for sure. But something else they should look at too is like square footage, because one thing
absolutely.
you did say was, well, once I got in my room at Grand Destino, it was great because the room was bigger. So I had plenty of room to leave the EVC and let it charge.
Yep,
Whereas sometimes the other resort rooms tend to be smaller. So especially if you have two family members with a mobility device, then it starts to become like, a spacing issue.
absolutely. And the thing is, I would say even with the Grand Destino, even though the rooms were larger and there was space at the front for me to park the ECV, there wasn't an easily accessible plug to charge it there. So that actually meant that we had to rearrange some of the furniture in the room in order to move the ECV to the other side, the far side of the room. And it did add a level of complication to things there. So as somebody who uses one regularly when I go, this is something that I look for. It's something that I would also consider bringing up to cast members as somebody who's never gone with an ECV before, or who's completely reliant on their ECV. I can give a lot of tips for moving around an ECV when you're not completely reliant, but when you are, the importance of going with somebody, having somebody with you, making those rooms available and accessible to you is really important. And I do think it is worth sometimes talking to cast members if you're going alone, or if you get there alone. Many of them are very willing to help you. Bell services are often very willing to help you if you need it. So that's another angle to consider.
That's
Also,
great advice. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. You are
yeah.
on a vacation. You're supposed to be creating magical memories, and both Disney and Universal want to make sure you leave happy and have a magical experience. So don't be afraid to ask if you need
And
help.
that's absolutely true in both places. I've never heard of anybody really having a terrible time saying, "Oh, I really need assistance," when they're clearly in need of assistance, and somebody like, "Oh, I don't want to help you." No, they always want to help you. They want to make sure you're having a great time, and they want to make sure that you're healthy and you're safe as well. So for sure, ask. Absolutely. Oh, and going back a little bit to the smaller rooms, while the value resort rooms are smaller, if you are going as a couple and you need two ECVs and there's only two of you, the fact that you can fold up that bed and it's just a table is a huge win for pulling in two ECVs. So that's another, sometimes just the ability to move things up. And some of the moderates have rooms like that too, where the second bed is also a Murphy bed style. So
And that's
that's
the
super
reason
convenient.
why you ask a travel genie to help you plan, is because they can tell
Absolutely.
you whether those rooms go up or down, and they can answer all those questions for you.
Absolutely. And we're totally willing to do all the phone calls with Disney and be like, no, it's got to be this kind of room. you know?
Absolutely. Absolutely. So the other question, that people sometimes want to know is, if you are unsure of how a ride is going to fit your body, and
Mm,
because people come in all shapes and sizes, and sometimes people feel uncomfortable trying to get into a ride, and finding out that it's difficult for them to fit in the ride. So how do you navigate that when you want to make sure
absolutely.
you have a good time, you don't want to embarrass yourself or cause a scene?
Absolutely. There are so many wonderful rides, and they are not all built the same. They are not for everyone. There was a whole lot of excitement about Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. What nobody tells you is that Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is kind of a 7-year-old's version of Big Thunder Mountain. It's built for small people. I mean, small people, short people who are 7 or 8 years old. The fact that mom and dad can fit is a luxury. Um, so when you know that there's such variance in ride shapes, whereas anybody could fit on Thunder Mountain, like there's virtually no body I've ever seen that has ever had a trouble getting on Thunder Mountain. Everybody has no problem, no fit, no problem, no fitting problems. But because there's obviously a ride variance, they're made for different ages, they're made for different sizes, they're made for different experiences. The person who's going for the first time isn't going to know that. I didn't know that when I got on Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. I had no idea I got on it. My knees were in my nose. I was like, wait a minute, I'm not even that tall. I'm only 5'5". Why are my knees in my nose? There's no space for my knees. I made it. It was uncomfortable. Sometimes you just don't want to be uncomfortable. Forget, being embarrassed. Sometimes you just don't want to have your knees in your nose. It's not comfortable. But there are rides that it's questionable. How are you going to fit? Or you have to sit just a certain way. And for many of those rides, there are test seats available. And if you ask a cast member who's at the front of the line, where's the test seat for this ride? Or is there a test seat for this ride? They will check you out and they will tell you where to go, where you can try it out. Flight of Passage is a great one for this because they actually have a tester seat. It's not right in front of the ride, but it's very near to it. You can sit there. A cast member can come over and help you to determine fit, or your friends can. And it's with that ride in particular, for example, it's a little bit more about how you sit more than the shape of your body. Shape of body does matter, size can matter, but really truly how you sit, learning how to sit in it, that tester seat is more helpful for that. But that tester seat, if you were saying, I'm going to try myself on there, and if I don't fit on this, I'm not going to get on the ride, you might actually be doing yourself a disservice anyway. So that is the information. I have to tell everybody that because that seat is smaller than the actual seats in the ride. So there are things you can do. You can absolutely try out tester seats. You can absolutely look online, or you can ask your travel genie, hey, is this ride good for me? These are my size. This is what I wear. This is what I look like. This is my things. And I can help you. I can also help point you to groups and amazing resources to help you find out whether or not other people found that ride comfortable and what their stats are, so that you can just compare privately at home before you even go.
Yeah,
So,
and I
for
think
sure.
some people wonder, why is there a variance in how tight or how wide open different ride vehicles are and all that kind of thing is. And I think it's important for people to realize that Disney Imagineers and designs all the rides, but a lot of times they actually have a roller coaster company or a ride company actually build and manufacture the rides for Disney. So it's actually the rides at Disney, while they're all designed and Imagineered by the amazing Imagineering department, they're actually manufactured by different companies. And so the way that they build those prototypes is not always the same. And so that's why there's kind of that variance. And of course, you also have the variance between how rides were manufactured back in the 60s and 70s versus how they're manufactured today. So
Very true.
That's why there's a huge variance in ride fit, I guess you could call it. Or,
yeah, it is. It's a matter of fit. It's less a matter of size. It's a matter of fit. There were rides that I've been on that I've gone, wow, that was it's a really great ride, but unfortunately, it's not the most comfortable thing in the world. You know, I love Dinosaur, but I also don't particularly love the fact that when it jostles you about, there's a good chance you're going to whack your back on the formed seats. You know, so there's all sorts of little tricky things that you wouldn't know till you get on it or till you see it.
and
And
it's
fit
also,
matters.
and it's also different too, Sarah. People forget that even though Disneyland and Disney World have the same rides, sometimes they fit differently.
Oh, absolutely.
You look at Splash Mountain at Disney World,
Mm-hmm.
it has everyone sits side by side next to each other. But at
Mm-hmm.
Disneyland, you can't sit side by side, it's behind. And then Space Mountain is the opposite. So at Disney
Yep.
World with Space Mountain, you're sitting behind each other, but over at Disneyland, you are side by side in Space
Yep.
Mountain. So there's that too. And see, people don't know that when they're planning their Disney or Universal vacations. Is that's why I use the Travel Planning Genie, is we can talk
Absolutely.
everyone through those things.
Absolutely. And being, you know, travel planning genies and being experts at the parks, we've gone on all the rides, we've done it, you know, and it makes a huge difference to be able to tell somebody, okay, so this ride, you know, this is how you want to do this ride, or this is how you don't want to do this ride, you know. What you just mentioned, Splash Mountain and the side by side, putting people of the same size in that row at Disney World is very important, because I took my daughter on that ride and I'm one size and she's another. And I felt like she was going to fly right out because there's more room because it's accommodating me, not her. That bar comes down for me, not her. You know, that's scary as a parent. You're holding onto your child going, no, wait. You know, it's so you want to know those things ahead of time.
Ride fit goes both ways, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It goes absolutely both ways. And, you know, I grew up with parents that had very bad backs. So for them, it's also about like, how smooth is a roller coaster? Does it jerk back and forth? That kind of thing. Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs Mine Train is a very smooth roller coaster because it is. Big Thunder Mountain Railroad is a lot rougher. And also the ride varies too, depending if you sit in the front or you sit in the back too.
Absolutely.
People don't realize that's, again, another reason why you should have.
And there are definitely, I mean, and if you are a person who's concerned about fit one way or another, definitely talk about it with your travel planning genie. Talk about it. Be open about your concerns or your questions. If you have mobility concerns, be open about those, because the more we know, the more we can help. I have a friend who was concerned because of the moving platforms, you know, just because, you know, I have an ankle that's always tricking me out. So now it's like, okay, well, let's talk about moving platforms. Let's talk about which rides don't have them, which is a great many, because they're not making too many with those anymore. But these rides have them. And this is what you can do to help work with that and work on that, or be prepared for them. So definitely worth talking about any concern you have, all of them.
Did you know that for the moving platforms, most of them actually have a remote control and the cast member controls the speed of it?
That is amazing. I did not know that.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah.
That is awesome.
So if you're ever, you know, on one of those moving platforms, they can speed it up, they can slow it down. And so the cast member can actually control it, and they can even stop it too. So
Do you know what? Do you know what's so funny about that? It's like I went on Peter Pan and I was like, I remember this floor being so much faster the last time I was on it, which was only a few months ago. And so now that you said, I'm like, oh, I
yes,
see. I
yeah,
see. Very smart.
yes,
Yep.
yes.
Very cool.
So hopefully the cast member you have isn't trying to get in their 10,000 steps really quickly for the
Right.
day.
Woof. You know, that is one way of doing it. Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Yeah. Talk to, and all, again, yes, always talk to a cast member too. You know, when you're there, just voice your concerns. When you get up there, they will help you. They will make sure that you get on that ride safely. Absolutely.
So what else? I mean, you've covered so much great advice, Sarah. Thank you so much. What else? What else? What would be your parting thought, I guess?
I think my parting thought is that no matter who you are, no matter what it is that you need, there's a very good chance that whether it's Disney or Universal, that you will find accommodations for you. If you work with the right travel planning genies, or if you talk to your cast members that you see, no matter where you are, they will definitely help you and get you what you need to know, prepare you, and be there for you to make sure that you have a wonderful time. Um, yeah, just talk to people, be open about your concerns, know that nobody's judging you. We're here for you. We want you to have a great, wonderful, and memorable time for all the best reasons.
I I agree. I couldn't say it better myself, and I really don't think people realize sometimes how hard Disney and Universal works to accommodate for guests with disabilities. One example that just popped into my head that I wanted to mention was Disney Cruise Line. If you have a CPAP machine, they actually keep distilled water that you need for your CPAP machine. They have it at guest services, and they provide it for guests with CPAP machines.
And that is such
So
a wonderful thing.
yes,
So
so
necessary, right?
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And it's something that if you don't have a family who has someone who uses a CPAP machine, you wouldn't even think about. But Universal and Disney, they really do think about that. Well, thank you so much, Sarah. I'm going to put down Sarah's individual calendar link again. If you have friends or family that's traveling to Disney or Universal with any kind of disability, she's more than happy to help you plan your Disney and Universal vacation. And we'll see everyone next week.
Absolutely. Thank you.